But thank you for taking time out. Obviously, we're here to talk about Mom. I think I caught this initially for Fright Fest Glasgow last year. Um, and I know that this film was kind of, sort of filmed it a little while ago. What was it about, Meredith that spoke to you and made you want to get involved?
It was just this story of, to me, postpartum depression. You guys say postnatal depression, I think, and that I've seen friends of mine go through. And to me, if I'm going to kind of talk about or do a movie about something so deeply serious, I like having a genre to attack it with. And I thought this was so smartly written. Phil, who wrote the movie, I think he had some personal experience with this, and it was just so real and authentic to me, but also in an well, I don't know if the word entertaining is right, but like a horror movie is, it's to entertain, and I don't think a lot of people would just go see a movie that is just a real sad, horrible experience that people go through. But if you couch it in that this is a horror movie, the monster is in her head, I think it's really interesting.
And you're not a mother yourself, but when I was watching it, I think you do a fantastic job at portraying certain aspects. And your co-star especially, I think I almost broke my telly when I first watched it because he was so frustrating. And he was so realistic to some, not just partners, but just people. I think, once somebody's had a baby, everybody thinks they know the right way. I mean, from the minute you're pregnant, everybody
Oh,
wants to know. And how much, research went into your performance. Were you talking to friends and, family members that had children and were like, what was it like, when you just when
yeah.
you had children before you get into the sadder side, just, that aspect of being a new parent.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you. And I think Francois in the movie does an amazing job, especially because he has a really hard job. Like, it's not a likable part to play, but the truth is that somebody just trying anything to like make this better in all the wrong ways sometimes. But yes, I did do a lot of research. I spoke to a couple people who had been through some serious postpartum depression, and I learned so much so that I'm doing this podcast now that's about women's health and stuff and how we don't talk about it. Women's bodies weren't even studied until very not that long ago. And that people don't know a lot of things, even about pregnancy. I didn't know things like a lot of people told me about breastfeeding, how difficult that is with you're just expected. I would think you just put the baby on and it's like an animal and it just does its thing, but that's not how it is. And a lot of people feel like a failure because of that. Like, why can't I do this thing that is supposed to be so natural? And then the thing that really stuck out to me was this one woman said, when you're pregnant, you're like a celebrity. Everybody's like, oh, they want to touch the stomach. They take my chair. Everybody like rolls out the red carpet for you. And the minute that baby is out of you, everything's about the baby. And you're just like this feeding thing, which I feel like there's this pressure also to seem not selfish because you're a mom now, but like this loss of identity to me was so heartbreaking because you can't win. Like you have to be a good mother, but to be a good mother, you have to be so selfish. But to be a good mother, you also have to have a good sense of self. You just can't win. And I don't know how anyone does it without going through this kind of horror story. I mean, I do consider this movie birth control for people, but just the crying alone was like, for me watching it, I've kind of known I knew I never wanted to have kids. I didn't think so. I mean, I have some frozen babies, so but definitely after this, I feel like I also don't know how mothers do it on their own. Like it is just going home from the hospital. I didn't even know about that. I didn't know about any of it. And I'm glad I know about it now because I never wanted to happen.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I was just as surprised as you were. Unfortunately, I was pregnant at the time, so it was too late. Like
Oh
suddenly
my God,
people
I'm
were
so
like,
sorry.
it's fine, but like suddenly people were like, oh yeah, no, this happens and this happens, and like, what? Okay, that could have done with knowing that a few months earlier, but okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild. And sort of,
Yeah.
throughout your career, you've worked within horror quite a bit. I think one of your first credits was a two-part episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? What is
It
it
was.
about that? Yeah, I think I actually remember seeing it, Dominic Zaprogna in. What was it about what is it about this genre and the roles conjured within it that you find so fascinating?
Well, to be quite honest, early on in your career as an actor, a lot of the time, horror movies or that kind of genre is the only thing you can really get because they don't need a big name star. Like, there are a lot of horror movies that you will see now that will become huge, like Blair Witch or anything. The monster is the star of the movie. And so, early in your career when most people won't cast you because you're not a name, horror movie is kind of your ticket in. Um, but now I feel like I love doing horror movies that subvert another genre. Like I love a dark comedy horror. I love this, a serious subject as horror. That to me is the most exciting. I'm not just as a fan, I'm not so much of a slasher movie horror person. I need it to have some like I don't want to say message, but like some other thing that kind of is deeper in it that I'm like, oh, that's what it's about. Which kind of reminds me of like The Neverending Story is my favorite movie of all time. But I recently watched it and I'm like, oh, this movie is about depression. And I didn't even know, like when you're a kid, you watch that movie and it's all about like Falcor. And I mean, it's still about Falcor, but I think there's something so I art like it's an art form to be able to um tell a meaningful story and have something to say with a horror movie.
I guess why do you hope that audiences take a chance with Mom? Like we said, it's got those horror elements, but it is still dealing with, quite a tough subject matter. Why do you hope that people take the time to seek this one out?
Well, first of all, it's this was a passion project. This was a movie we no one made money. No one it was a story that we all felt needed to be told. And first and foremost, I think smaller movies like this um just need an audience to like speak out about them and then they grow into something that they're meant to be. I don't know if that makes sense, but just I would love people to get what I got from it, which was this this story of a couple and a marriage and a mother just going through hell. And it's not that you go see this movie and then you look at every woman who has had a baby and you have some empathy and have some like it's not easy, even though it gets dark. But and if you have gone through that, like I do give the caveat that, it's a real dark movie and so it could be triggering to some people. Um, but I think it could also be to me helpful hopefully in a way that you're like oh somebody's talking about this like this the experience of breastfeeding that it's like not easy and the like just staying home with a baby all day crying all the time and you're supposed to be like oh it's a precious little baby but like it could drive you nuts it drove me nuts so yeah.
Yeah, well, it is, it is got that cathartic element to it. So, thank you so much. And I guess, you're mentioning that podcast. That sounds quite interesting. Where can people, what's it called, and where can people find it?
It's called the Whisper Network. And because me and my friend Katie Bolin, who co-hosts it with me, we realize that whenever we're talking about like some woman's health thing, we're always kind of whispering about it to our friends, like, have you had this thing happen? And then somebody's like, oh yeah, I went on Reddit and this thing, and if you take Allegra with this, and that you have to find out things about your body like that. So now we have experts on, we have doctors, we have people. I do want to get some I do want to do an episode about postpartum depression. But yeah, so it's called the Whisper Network. It's everywhere you can get your podcasts. And we just launched our last episode is with Jamila Jamil, who will blow your mind. Like we both left that, me and Katie left that interview being like, our lives are changed, that we actually, she will leave you actually wanting to get older as a woman, which never thought I'd feel that way.
Well, thank you. It sounds fascinating. I'm going to go in and look that up as soon as I've got the little all in bed. Best of luck with the release of this film and your future endeavors.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your article. It was so great.